good evening. Welcome to Marriage Mondays. We're here tonight to discuss part two of what I wish I had known before we got married. I had a very in-depth discussion last week dealing with this same topic, and we're just going to expound on some of the other ideas in the book, some more topics, not necessarily covering what we covered last week, but we will just be kind of reviewing it to a lot more people get into the chat box and watching us. We have 3 people watching now. We just love the fact that y'all are tuning in and joining in with us, and to come with us every Monday night to see what the Lord has to say about your relationships. And we just want to continue to thank you for coming in and joining us. Okay. So one of the things we talked about last week, and of course, you know me and my wife, Trina, myself, Nick, and Trina Brinson, and we are under the leadership of Dr. Finance and Lady Denise Bush at Crown Kingdom Cultural Center in North Augusta, South Carolina. We just appreciate their leadership and what they've done for us in our relationship, and we just want to thank you for joining us. Anything you got to say?
No, it's been a good topic. We got a lot of positive feedback last week, and we went over our allotted time last week, and several people commented that they wish we had gone longer. So apparently it's a popular topic that resonates with a lot of people. So there's a lot more in the book and a lot more we could say. So we decided it was appropriate to just kind of do a continuation of our conversation from last week, since that seems to be an area of interest for people.
All right, we have 11 viewers looking at this with us tonight already, so we'll wait till a few more get in. Just going to do a little review from last week. The first thing we talked about last week was love in 2 stages. You get that first love of, that infatuation. I'm in love with her, and we learned that lasts about 2 years, some longer, some less. But then that love becomes a choice, and you make a choice to be in love with that other person and to do what needs to be done for the other person for the love to last in your relationship.
Yeah, the butterflies don't last forever.
Okay. We also discussed the apologizing and forgiveness. You can't talk about those 2 topics enough, because in a marriage relationship, as close as people get, that tends to be one of the things that keep your relationship together, is learning how to apologize to the other person and try not to do it again, and learn how to forgive. Yeah,
I think we talked about that about 2 weeks ago. We didn't discuss that last week, but we spent a whole lesson talking about apologizing and making sure that the way you apologize is effective, so that your spouse actually feels that you are truly remorseful, that there's some redemption, that it was sincere. So to have an effective apology so that you can move forward from that, it is important for you to realize what language your spouse prefers for that apology to come, so that those problems are not ongoing.
Okay.
And to forgive quickly, not to let it linger.
Please don't let that linger. It can ruin a couple of days of your life if you do.
Well, it gets in your heart, if you, sometimes when you let that anger just kind of rest, and the Bible tells you don't let the sun go down upon your wrath. So got to learn how to let that go, but to deal with it. Yeah, pushing it aside for later is not the same as actually forgiving. So you need to be able to address the issue and to have a system of addressing problems between the 2 of you, so that you can stay on the same page.
All right. We also discussed self-cleaning.
Right.
I mean, that there are responsibilities in the household that both parties need to take a part in to make the house flow better. And establishing systems is one of those things that you can do within your household, of what needs to be done to make it flow better.
Yeah. Can't just assume things will get done, or assume that something is somebody else's job. There needs to be a conscious oral agreement between the 2 of you so that you're both satisfied and content with the way things are going, or with who has what responsibilities.
Okay. So, with that said, we're going to start tonight's new topics, and we're still coming from the book, things I wish I had known before I got married. Those are the things that we're going to talk about in the same book. We want to put the book out there. Dr. Gary Chapman is the author of this book, and we just want to continue to give homage to the book that we're coming from and give credit, because we don't want to be accused of plagiarism. So we just want to give this book the proper introduction it needs.
Yes.
All right. So tonight we're going to discuss, first topic is like mother, like daughter, like father, like son. How appropriate is that? Most of us tend to act like that person in our life that has that type of influence over us. I've been told several times that you look just like your daddy, you act like your daddy, you kind of talk like your daddy, and some of those qualities that my daddy has are positive, and some of them are negative. So I have to be conscious about how I'll allow the influence that he had on my life to dictate what I'm going through in my life, especially in my marriage. So let's just be cognizant of what the influences our parents had on us as we grew, and how that's going to work in your relationship. You got anything to say to that?
Yeah, I notice the older I get, my mom keeps saying, "You are your mother's child." You said that just like I did. You know, she even sees how my behaviors are becoming similar to hers. You know, but it's still important for us to make sure that we make sure that our actions are our own, and that we're motivated from the right source, that we aren't doing things just because that's what we observed and that's what we, the way we experience life. We have to make sure that what we're doing inside of our marriage really is authentic to our current relationship, and so that our motivation is related to our relationship, not related to our individual experiences. It's about our experiences together and about what our goals are together. So even in that, one thing though is when you're dating somebody, you know, it does give you a little bit of a glimpse into the future, at least one future possibility. When you meet their parents, it does give you some insight into where this person may be headed in the future. You know, not to say it's written in stone, but it certainly can give you an idea. Because I know I guess we dating and married, I guess we're on 26, 27 years, something like that. And I definitely can say that looking at his dad does give me a lot of information about the man I see before me today, and he could absolutely say the same thing about me and my mom.
Right. They serve as indicators of what the possibilities could be, like my wife just said. And as a cognizant person in yourself, you got to learn how to take what the good things that they've done and given you, and make it where it works in your family. You as being understanding of how the negative things that they do also can affect how your family operates, but you got to learn how to separate the two. Just like my dad, he's a hard-working man and a very loyal man, and those two things I think I really got from him. You know, being loyal and working hard and doing the best job that you could possibly do. There are some things that he has done that I know of that would not work in my marriage. Is. So me just knowing him and knowing who I am, I learned to just separate those two things so it doesn't get involved in my family and have the influence on my family. So that's one of those things I see of being like daughter and like son. Okay. So we've addressed that. What's the next topic?
One of the things that's good to know before you get married is that mutual sexual fulfillment is not automatic. So for some, I think there's so much reference to sex on TV and music and just in the world around us. It's like nothing's taboo anymore. Everybody just puts it all out there. And very often what's out there is not really realistic, and it makes it just is a skewed perception of reality. And if you bring those preconceived ideas into your marriage, thinking that marriage is going to be sex every night and swing from the chandeliers and all that, you will be disappointed when you find out that in the real world people are tired. When they've worked all day, and every night of the week is just not going to work. At least past first little bit of marriage, that's just not realistic, and that can be a disappointment. If that's where your expectations are. And also even the behaviors, the way you go about engaging in sex can be a problem if what one person considers acceptable can be considered unacceptable by the other person.
Right.
And so you have to have some agreement and some open conversation so that area of your marriage is not a point of contention or a point of frustration for one or for both of you. There has to be some open, honest conversation surrounded. It's not automatic. You just don't. Some people think when you get married, you just have sex all the time, as much as you want, and that's just not realistic. So you've got to have some conversation around what those expectations are.
Right. And what I've been reading with Dr. Chapman has been talking about is some people bring the idea of pornography into their relationship with which is an unanticipated expectation that you have on another person based on what you've seen on a TV or a computer. So when you're trying to mimic or do the same thing that you've seen on screen, you're setting your partner up for failure, because you have to learn how to be in a sexual fulfilled relationship with your partner and understand the boundaries that you need to set in order for the other person to get fulfillment. Because if you don't and you're just doing it your way and how you want to do it, that lends itself to be sexual abuse in a marriage relationship. So you don't want to get caught up in that, because one person will be getting fulfilled doing it the way they do it, and then the other person will be getting resentful, and then all that'll stop. So you need to learn how to engage your partner in a way that both of y'all are being fulfilled sexually in the marriage relationship.
And some people come with a lot of negative experiences. Maybe they've been molested or had some sexual abuse, rape, things like that. That happens. And so when people are coming into the marriage with that type of history, sex is not a positive thing for them. And it may be a difficult area, something that's more of a duty and something they kind of have to grin and bear it to get through. And that's not really God's plan for sex inside of marriage. That's not his plan for it to be something negative and something, laborious, or, I'm just going to get through this and it's one-sided. It's meant to be for reproduction, but it's also meant to bring us together, to bring people together. It's a healing part of the relationship. And if you're not using sex in that way as to bring you closer together and to keep you bonded, then you're missing out on what God's intention is for sex in your relationship. So when there's that history there, you may have to get counseling for it. You may have to you need to be able to talk about it among each other. Hopefully that's something that really can be talked about even in a dating relationship. It should be brought up. And we'll talk about dating a little more in depth towards the end of our session today. But it's a serious area where some conversation needs to be had. It's not all fun and games until you get on the same page, and then you can do what you do.
Okay.
Whatever suits the two of you, that's between the two of you. Right. It's nobody else's business. You don't need anybody else's approval for it. You do what works for the two of you.
Amen. Another thing that could be done before you even get married, and this is our third topic of the night, is learning each other's personality. Taking a personality profile test or personality traits. That can tell you a lot about the other person. And at this age, we don't deviate from our personalities and our inner values and what we think make us who we are. So taking a personality profile test can tell you a lot about how the other person thinks, how they how they do things about their daily operation, how they actually feel,
Their mood.
emotional state. It tells you a lot. For instance, in the book, he talks about, are you a professor or a dancer? So, are you a professor? A professor means that you somebody that has to be taught and structured in everything that they do and how they operate on a daily basis. A dancer is somebody that's, they can go with how the wind blows and just flow with what's going on. If you get two people that don't understand that about each other, that could cause a lot of friction in your relationship. So learn how the other person operates and think in their daily thought pattern, daily move, the way they just do things on a daily basis, their daily function.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And I would encourage you to take some time and to do a personality profile, not like a quick Facebook test. That's pretty much junk science. But to choose, there's so much online. I wish I had remembered the name of that personality profile we did. But there are lots out there that are scientifically supported. That's my point, is to choose something serious, something that's scientifically supported, so that you can do some type of test or have some type of profile. Because the more you understand about yourself and the way you think and the way you are designed, the better you can appreciate that somebody else or your spouse may be designed differently. And so when you educate yourself on what your spouse's personality type is, and you understand your own personality type, it should make you more patient and more tolerant and better able to communicate, better able to function, to give each other time and space based upon personality. In the book, Gary Chapman talks about the fact that he had all these, grand visions that when he got married, he and his wife were going to have breakfast, out on the porch with coffee and talk and listen to the birds first thing and watch the sunrise. And then he realized once they got married that she don't even get up out of bed till lunchtime. And it's just not happening. And so he was disappointed about it, but he had to come to realize that is who she is. She was a night owl, and he would wake up early in the morning. And so they had to come to terms that if they were going to have breakfast together, it was going to have to be brunch. And they had to work with that, or that he learned to take that time by himself in the morning and to really value that time and make it work for him, instead of being bitter about it and wanting to force her to do something that goes against her natural makeup. He had to make that sacrifice, and or not really a sacrifice, just that adjusting his expectations so that it would suit their relationship. And I think that's a good example of the kind of adjustments that we have to make, because we are different people, and some things about us are not going to change, not because we're stubborn about it, but because that's the way God designed us. And so we have to respect that of one another in order to be stronger, to be strong. Those differences are part of what makes us a good match for each other. When you are what I'm not, you bring a different perspective, and we can come up with better solutions when we're able to see things from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
Okay. We didn't do. Oh, you want to go to this one? All right, spirituality. Okay, this next subject area. I don't know if that's what you call it, but the next thing that you might want to know is that if you're a person who's religious or spiritual, you have to know that the person you're dating or the person you're married to, that there's a difference in being spiritual and just going to church. They are not one and the same. So if you're dating somebody and you ask them, hey, are you a Christian? And they say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, I go to church. Okay, that's not enough for you to just check off that box that you guys are going to be compatible spiritually. Unless you're the same kind of person where, your answer is, yeah, I'm a Christian, I go to church. But if your life doesn't reflect that, for one person, if, their day-to-day decisions are based upon their spiritual beliefs, but the other person, their day-to-day decisions are not based on their spiritual beliefs, but they do go to church, that can be an incompatibility. And the Bible teaches us about being unequally yoked. And we learned there's a lot of variation in what people believe about that scripture. And I'm not going to try to break it down for you. I'm not a minister. But it is very important for you to understand that your relationship with Christ, your spiritual beliefs need to be compatible. Because if he's a highly spiritual person, to where he makes decisions by praying, by fasting, by listening to the voice of God, and if I'm a person who only makes decisions based on logic and reasoning and what's right in front of me, and he's trying to move by faith and I'm trying to move by logic, we're going to have a problem. And so we have to be on the same page spiritually. A lot of people, and I don't want to tell you what to do here. I just want to give information. You need to factor in church what you're hearing. I don't understand how you can grow together if you're not hearing and learning the same thing from a spiritual perspective. So I certainly don't want to get into going to different churches. I don't think that's what we're here for. But the bottom line is the compatibility, and you all both growing and being on the same page spiritually. It's going to be real tough if one of you is a Christian and the other person is a Muslim. How is that going to work? You two have to agree in order to walk together, and that certainly comes into play when you're talking about spirituality. So you have to know where this person stands spiritually, or you're going to have a good bit of problems within your marriage if you're not on the same page spiritually.
Yep.
Do we have any questions yet? Any questions on your page?
So that's one thing about being in attendance at church, and you can attend church on a weekly basis, and but it's all about the growth between you and Jesus, and therefore when you grow, your family grow too. It's hard to be what I call a CEM Christian. You go to church on Christmas, Easter, and Mother's Day. But you need to understand that you need to be in the church more times than that, and you need to read your Bible and get a relationship with the Holy Spirit to hear the things that you need to hear. So when you go into prayer, you'll learn how to hear His voice, and a lot of that can dictate a lot of things that's going on in your marriage.
Resolve.
It give you some resolve about what's going on with your wife, because the Holy Spirit will tell you quick, you was wrong for that last night. You need to make amends for that before you leave the house. So when you do that, you're getting yourself and you're invested in the Holy Spirit, so you can be able to communicate with your partner better.
Yeah. I honestly don't know how people just stay married if they don't have the benefit of communication through the Holy Spirit, because sometimes you just can't get through to one another, and it really does take God leading you for you to understand how to better communicate, or when to communicate, or even what to say, what to communicate. And sometimes communication will happen between us without us having to, before we can talk, God will get to either or both of us, and then that resolution comes about a whole lot easier by having that sort of intermediate help,
mediation, spiritual
Thank you.
mediation.
And that's one of the purposes of the Holy Spirit. It's for guidance. So, yeah, certainly encourage you to be spiritually compatible.
Okay. And the last topic we're going to talk about tonight is, is directed towards the singles tonight, and it still implies itself when you get married, is the development of a healthy dating relationship. Couple of topics we're going to talk about under this, couple of headings. Learn how to be intellectual with each other. Learn how to conversation with them that's intellectually stimulating. When you're dating somebody, you're using words and you're using ideas and things that are over their head, and they keep on asking you, what you say, what you mean by that, and how's that? why you keep on using them big words when we talking? You're not intellectually compatible with that person, and you need to understand that that can affect your dating relationship. That can affect your marriage relationship. I'm not saying you shouldn't date anybody that's not intellectually compatible with you, but that's one of those roadblocks that you can go into before you get into marriage. Right.
That's a very important one. And I ain't gonna lie, even dating in high school, if you can't keep up with the conversation, you're not for me. Because that, if I can't have an intellectual conversation, that's a part of who I am. I like to talk about topics that involve, some intellectual thought. And so if you can't keep up with the conversation, that's going to be a problem if we can't stimulate our minds, if we can't go beyond just the basic day-to-day things and we don't think alike, that's a no-go. If you can't keep up, if you got to ask for definitions of words or, and that goes both ways, because if somebody's talking over your head and you don't know what they're talking about, this is somebody you're going to get bored with. Because, either way, whether you're the more intelligent person or the less intelligent or whatever, however you want to view it, if you're incompatible, that's going to get to be a problem either way, whichever end of it you're on. If they're talking over your head and you don't know what they're talking about, they're interested in topics that you have no interest in, then that's something you need to consider in the dating relationship. That can truly make or break a relationship long term, and it's something you need to think about. Cute is okay, but it's got to be something more.
Yeah. Also, up under the same topic of healthy dating relationship is how much influence you really gonna allow your family to have in your relationship, because we know there's some families that are tight knit, and like I say, the influences that come from the families tie you to the family. So when you're developing a relationship with another person outside of your family, you got to learn how to make both of those relationships work. But it has to be beneficial to you and the person that you're really thinking about marrying, because your family can have ideas about the other person and they don't know them. That's why it's a good idea for the person that you're thinking about marrying. They need to spend time around your family as much as possible, so the family can get to know them and they can get to know the family.
Right.
So, one thing I like when our bishop, Finance Bush, married people, when he dismissed the couples, after they've been, you can kiss the bride and basically they jump the broom and leave the room, he has a little talk with the people in the family on both sides. And he basically states, if you didn't have anything to this point to say to those individuals that's positive, that's divisive and can split them up, you need to keep that to yourself now. The only thing you need to develop as a married couple, because marriage in itself is a challenge. Right. And that's the I'm gonna say that's the decree he gives the family at the end of the marriages that I've seen him do. And it's a great thing to do.
Yeah, they need support.
Right.
They don't need people pulling them apart.
All right. Also, you need to talk about your intellectual and your vocational goals. What kind of job you gonna have? What kind of education you're trying to get? How much time is it gonna take? How much money is it gonna take to you to give to your education and your vocational goals? Those are all topics that take time to discuss, and you need this time together to learn each other. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can I give you a couple comments?
Okay.
Now, this is a comment about I think being compatible spiritually is Tori Cummins sent in that he had a relative who was Baptist and his wife was Jehovah's Witness anymore. So I mean that lets you know just how serious that is. That incompatibility, it can absolutely tear a marriage apart. So it's something you need to consider from the beginning. Not saying it's not possible to work through those challenges, but it's a serious difference that has to be considered. Another comment was that age is also a factor with stimulating conversation, and that's very true. We do have people who are married where there's a big age difference, 15, 20 years even, and that can be a factor. But it really just depends on the two people and how they go about relating to their differences and being able to talk about their differences, because clearly because of age there will be some differences, but it really just depends on that couple. I'm sure if there is a difference in relationship, I mean in the age, a big difference in age, they know it from the beginning, and so that is something to consider. Is can they have stimulating conversations? Sometimes intellect and age are not necessarily what doesn't necessarily dictate how well a person's conversation goes, but it certainly can be a factor if there's, depending on what kind of age group you're in. If you're talking about 50 and 70, that's not as much of an issue as if you have somebody who's 20 and the other person is 35 or 40. You're going to have a huge discrepancy there.
Oh, talking about age, and just something that's popped up in my mind. We talked and worked with a couple that were unequal, and one had already been married, and one was going into a marriage first time. There's a difference of experience in that.
That's true.
So that's another thing that needs to be talked about if you're dating somebody that has already been married.
Right.
That has went through a divorce and a lot of things that can interrupt the marriage relationship. Those are the things that you need to talk about too with that person.
Right. To make sure you're on the same page with that. Another question is,
Statement.
I'm sorry, you wanted to read it?
This is from
My mom.
my mother-in-law, and she states that spiritual belief is a number one priority. You should hear the same information. That's coming from somebody that has been married. How long?
40, well, probably almost 50 years now. Yeah, because Dawn will be 50.
Yep.
Yeah, and they
Almost 50 years.
Yeah, but they also pastor and counsel other couples as well. And this was a question from someone who's not married, a young person. When do I introduce a boyfriend to extended family? What do you think about that?
I really don't have an answer to that. That has to be something that with your relationship with God and through your experiences, you have to come up with that information.
I would say early is a good idea, because if you can see that someone clicks with your family or doesn't click, I mean, for you, depending on how close you are with your family and what you think of your family's opinion, I think you have to decide if you want to introduce your family member early on or to wait. But personally, I feel like early is better, because sometimes they can see more than what you can see. But it also depends on your relationship with your family, how much you value their opinion. If you know they're going to be critical of anybody that you bring around, then you might want to wait until you're more sure. But if you value their opinion and you really do want to know, how does this person click with my family, then, I mean, even early on, I don't think it's too much if you're not. It kind of also depends on how old you are and, how committed you are to the dating process. If you're just, how seriously you're dating, that's what I'm trying to say. So if you're dating with the mindset of marriage, then, I mean, you really do have to factor in how much of your family's opinion are you interested in for you to make a decision about maintaining this relationship or not. So, because sometimes you need other people's feedback, and sometimes you don't want other people's feedback if they're, if you feel like their motives are not in your best interest. So I think that's probably the best answer I can give, is you have to gauge how much of their opinion do you want.
Right. All right, a couple more factors, and we'll end this session tonight. Along with intellectual, you got to learn emotional stability along with somebody else. Everything can't be a hot topic. You got to get some emotional stability within your relationship to allow both people to be emotional in their way. Some people are very emotional, and some people are less emotional. And that affects decisions that are made between both people. But you got to learn how to meet somewhere in the middle based on emotional togetherness. Social factors. My wife has told me, she's not a people person, and she doesn't like to be around a whole bunch of people. But myself, I am a people person, and when we were in college, she was good with us being together with a couple of friends, but I was a fraternity boy, and I like to go to parties and step shows and do the things that fraternity boys do. So when we met, I had to pull away from some of that if I wanted to be with her, because she had all the qualities in a woman that I wanted. So, we understood that I did have responsibility to my fraternity while I was in college, but also at that point she was starting to take priority in my life. So, that's where we came to an agreement. When you say,
I mean, that was a decision you made.
Right.
I don't think I had any, we didn't talk about that. I mean, that was 100% your choice to do that. You knew that I don't like to party and have, I don't like the loudness, the smells, and the drinking and all that. That has always gotten on my nerves. And so that just wasn't my scene. And so, if he invited me somewhere, I would let him know, well, what's it going to be? And if it's going to be like a club or something, I was like, I'll see you the next night. Mm-hmm. That was just if he wanted to be with me, that was just something I wasn't willing to compromise on. And so now that we are married, we do have events. We just had a big gathering this weekend. And sometimes he wants to do gatherings with, sports gatherings or whatever. And that's fine as long as I know in advance and I have time to get my mind right and to make sure the house is right or whatever. As long as he gives me that courtesy, I can adjust to that. It's not like I'm dictating we cannot have big crowds at our house. That's not the way that goes, because I know that's a part of something that he enjoys, and I enjoy it too. I just enjoy it in small doses and for a small period of time. I don't like long gatherings. I don't like too much, something packed, wall to wall. That's not for me. And he knows that, so he doesn't pressure me into that. And he made the choice to dial back on how he was spending his time socially, because he was choosing to spend time with me. But I didn't ask that of him as we were dating. If that would have continued to be a problem, we probably wouldn't have kept dating.
Right.
But that was just, I never gave him an ultimatum. That was just his choice. So, and that was part of the process of choosing who is right for me and who's not right for me.
And like she said, it was my choice to do that. And I had friends that respected, and they respected my decision to do that, because they had spent enough time around her and understanding that this is the person I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life with, because we done had these conversations amongst the boys, and they understood what I was trying to do. So, I had people supporting me, and one of our lifelong friends who is always on Mondays with us is Tori Cummins. He's always kind of pushed us together. He would give himself credit for us being together.
Yes,
but and they knew our personalities, and I wasn't real influenced by a whole bunch of people my age. I was always kind of did my thing when I'm with people my age, but I knew in order to be with this particular woman, those things had to happen.
Yeah.
So.
And I went to many a step show that I would not have otherwise attended if I had not gotten to the point to where I knew supporting him was important. So as we were dating, and he was involved in all this fraternity stuff, when they had events, I went to the formals with him because he wanted me to. I went to step shows. I remember you was stepmaster a couple times, and he was real proud of that and was really active in it. It was important to him. So I went to those events, not grudgingly. I went willingly and was excited to support him. So I still didn't like the crowd, but I dealt with it because I wanted to make sure he saw my face and that I was supporting him, throughout those events. And that's part of what you have to be aware of in the process of dating and within building a relationship, is you have to decide, what part of you are you willing to adjust in order for the sake of the relationship.
And one more thing, she just reminded me of something. When you're in this dating relationship and you're trying to develop a healthy dating relationship, you need to acknowledge that person that you're dating. in the public forum.
Yeah,
Meaning,
that's true.
you know, because I was around all of my friends and the fraternities and sororities, and it involves males and females, most of those people knew that she was my girlfriend at the time, and when she became my fiance, they knew that. You know, I didn't, you know, I'd have to push her to the side when she came to town and act like I didn't have a girlfriend 90% of the time. I had a girlfriend and a fiance all the time, 100%, and they knew that. So it didn't make it too hard for me to stay loyal to her when she was not in town with me. So, you know, that's the way that our relationship grew during the dating process. Learn to give that person some public praise.
Yeah, and that's important even inside of marriage too. Is that through the years, as you have accomplishments or get accolades, to always acknowledge your spouse, because the two of you are one, and whatever you're endeavoring to do, you're both a part of it, regardless if you are physically there. Like, he did a lot of coaching through the years, and a lot of what he did day to day, I was not physically there. I'm not on the field on the sideline, you know, passing out sandwiches to the kids. And some coaches' wives do that, and they're there for the practices, and they're cooking and having kids in their home. That's not the way we function. Number one, because he worked in he always worked in a different town from where we lived. Mm-hmm. And number two, we were not that family to have a house full of kids. We both have hearts for kids and compassion for kids. We serve kids. That's a big part of who we are. Identity as a couple is serving children, and as educators and supporting them. That's a huge part of who we are. But we were just not that family to have a house full of kids all over. That just wasn't who we were, and so we don't pretend to be who we're not.
Right.
And so we didn't do that. So, but my way of supporting him. What was your preferred way for me to support you?
Back then was just come to the games and probably bring the girls to the games.
Mm-hmm. And taking care of the kids when he's not there. When he's having to work long hours, knowing that his kids are covered. And so we would just show up for the games sometimes, and not every game, because once again, he was working in a totally different city. And I had two small kids, or even when I had one small kid, it was a challenge. Having to, travel with the baby for an hour to go sit out in the sun, or to sit for basketball around people who bash the coach the whole time, that kind of stuff. So it was that support. My point is that it's important to support your spouse in a way that works for the two of you. It doesn't necessarily have to look like what somebody else's marriage looks like, or the way they support each other.
And just understand that support really starts during the dating relationship, giving up that time to each other. So those are our topics for tonight. We covered 5, and I think we're about done.
Yeah, we used up our time. So we hope that was helpful. That it gives you some things to think about and some conversation to talk about, particularly if you're dating. Or if you can even identify some areas in your marriage that where you have seen some struggle, and maybe it goes back to getting down to the foundation and finding out how you're compatible, where you have some incompatibilities that you need to work out. You got to have those conversations. You should always be able to talk to your spouse. Like we always say, if you need to set aside a time, put it on the calendar, stick to it, dedicate that time to address whatever issues you have. Invest in your marriage.
So with that said, I think we're done for the night. Just want to send a shout out to our oldest girl who graduated on Saturday. The reason you see the stuff behind us and the balloons is we're not quite finished with the party stuff, taking it down. 2020 graduate at Evans High School. Yeah. And we just want to congratulate her on her beginning of her life.
And the whole entire class of 2020, because these kids are resilient. And as they're going into adulthood, I expect to see the world change from what these kids can do after all they've been through at the age of 18 collectively as a community. I don't think we've seen a class that has been through as much as they have collectively in our lifetime. these 9/11 babies that turned out to be the COVID-19 graduates. So we just want to congratulate all of them. Tierra Duggar is another one from our church that's graduating, as well as Brianna Eubanks. So we are very proud of them. And we just, give love to all the graduates, 2020 graduates, college graduates too.
Yeah.
And thank you. We have Bishop Bush and Lady D joining us tonight. So we are so honored for you to join us. And we always just want to continually thank you guys for allowing this platform and for all that you poured into all of us at Crown, and particularly into us. And so we just want to give service by giving back and sharing with others, even just a portion of what you guys have done for us. So we just want to send some love your way.
All right. With that said, from the lady and the coach, we love you. Y'all have a good night.
Good night.